The year is 2032, and something is rotten in San Angeles, California. Frosty-tipped madman Simon Phoenix is secretly released from a cryogenic prison into the utopian city of the future with orders to kill the leader of an underground rebellion. But thanks to the nerdish tendencies of Officer Lenina Huxley, the police force of the future who love wearing Nazi-themed uniforms, defrost the Demolition Man himself, John Spartan. As he hunts down Simon Phoenix through the Joy city of San Angeles, he finds himself in a fish-out-of-water experience of brain-fucking, shit-covered seashells, and Taco Bells as far as the eye can see. This is 1993's Demolition Man.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
And tonight, I've got very special guests returning to the show. I've got Chris and Elle of Spoil My Movie Podcast doing another Stallone movie, which we promised our listeners that you'd get, and you're getting it. So welcome back to the show.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Of course, and by the end of this, maybe we can finally settle after all which is the better movie, Demolition Man or Judge Dredd, because it was a hot debate when we were on last time. So we'll see where that goes.
All right.
Chris may have some salty or choice words for me today.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. So before we get started into this exciting episode, how's the show going? What are we looking forward to in 2024? We're in a brand new year. This is actually episode 2 of the video version of the Cultworthy. So you guys are in like the early testing grounds of this concept. And I'm really excited that you're on here. And thank you for dressing appropriately.
Yeah, I did nothing.
This is just how I woke up.
But yeah, I'm very pleased that you're now doing video for Cultworthy. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
2.5 years, I had to do something different, right? Like that's the thing where you feel so comfortable in what your concept is, and you feel so comfortable in doing the same thing every week. And then when you don't see any progression, you don't move the needle forward, it's like, okay, so what's the next step? And we belong to a network and everyone's moving into video. My other network is moving into video as well. So I'm like, okay, I've already got this set up for the MILF and me. I may as well just use it for the Cultworthy. So we're doing it. And like I said, this is episode number 2.
That's a great idea. I'm glad you're doing it.
Demolition Man. Now, we already know about Elle's love for Arnold Schwarzenegger to an almost uncomfortable amount, but we'll get to that later.
For me.
Yeah, seriously, you got a lot to live up to. Now, I saw this in the theater with my dad. I was 12 years old, and yeah, it was right up our alley. I think he wasn't ready for the satire of it, because he was a Rambo guy and he was a Rocky guy. Not a lot of laughs in those movies. And so here we are in this futuristic dystopian society, but instead of going the 1984 route, we're going like this weird Mr. Rogers sanitized version of the future, which back then, the joke was I think, very, very funny. And now, the way that we're seeing the future go, they got it way wrong. And it actually kind of sounds like I would prefer this kind of future as opposed to the future that I feel the world's going in. But I don't know. Give me more time to think about that. What was your original experience with this film?
For me, I watched it, I believe, on HBO or some similar cable service at my mother's friend's house. And they just put it on, and it was towards the end of the night. And I was about, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years old. And it was, well, no, I guess you're about the same age as me. So maybe I was even a little older than that. But I remember sitting there and watching it and thinking, this is awesome. It was exactly what I needed at that moment of time. And I had such fond memories of it going forward that even going back and watching it when it hit a little bit campier in my older years, I was still on board for it.
What about you, Elle?
I think I was always kind of tepid on it. I'm a little older than Chris by just like a smidge. And when I saw it, I think I had a little bit more of a critical lens because I did enjoy Rocky and more sentimental things before then. So I wasn't crazy about it, just like I wasn't crazy about that era of Sylvester Stallone films.
And we kind of talked about that in the Judge Dredd episode for sure. The one thing that always kind of rubbed me a little bit wrong, even as a kid in the theater, is as much as I had fun with the movie, I had fun with the things the movie was giving me in sense of action and some fun characters, and Simon Phoenix was kind of pretty cool. But it seemed like it would have been better as a PG-13 rated movie than an R-rated movie because it already has that kind of sanitized sensibility. There is like a contradiction, a juxtaposition of like what it's doing with its language and its violence as opposed to what its setting is. You know, it'd be like if you made Kindergarten Cop R instead of PG-13, you know, like it just doesn't feel right. And that's the one thing that's always been a little unsettling to me about this movie is like, did they push the satire and the juxtaposition of what they were doing so hard that it had to be R and violent? And I mean, the vulgarity of the movie actually is part of the satire, that he can be vulgar and there's a law against vulgarity in the future, why everyone is so sanitized and clean and jokey and hokey. So I get it, but that's the one thing that always felt a little bit off to me is I felt like this should have been a PG-13 movie.
That's fair. I mean, although if it was a PG-13 movie, I think exactly what you pointed out, the language wouldn't have been there to be a punchline. And I think
Right.
it was used to great effect, you know, just as a substitute for toilet paper. And sometimes you just hear the noise of that ticket spouting out in the background and you don't.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was fantastic. It was almost like a National Lampoon's audio gag.
Yeah.
As an audio person, like for me, I give it points for that reason, for its consistency, and I also give it some respect for its commitment to having that very sterile language and for, you know, constantly, you know, being punitive on the people that are not following these rules. Like you'll hear that ticket like 50 miles away. And so
Right.
I appreciate that even if they're in the middle of a battle, if they're like, fuck you, it's happening in the background. And I'm like, you know, I do respect that level of detail. I'm a little OCD myself. So, you know, props.
You know, and the other thing about this too is I think a lot of people, especially generations behind us, don't remember the PC movement and craze of the early 90s, where we were starting to see like the early examples of more thoughtful language and more sanitized language. And that's, you know, worked its way into our culture in the last 30 years or more, doing that to extreme levels for some people. But it was still kind of safe to joke about the PC culture back then because it was that weird time where you had boomers, Gen Xers, and then us Zennials as kids all kind of fighting with each other of what was the right thing to say and wasn't. But it was all about language, where now it's more about language and like clatures and how we refer to other people and societies and things like that. We've just enhanced it. I think that the joke works for a PC era film like this, but it doesn't play well for younger audiences now because it feels like it's mocking what they believe in, even though what they believe in wasn't even really a thing back in 1993. So when I played this for younger people, they don't like it. Like they are actually offended by the fact that the PC movement's been created into a city where violence ensues and you have this guy running amok. Like it's an interesting concept now, where back then it kind of made sense that it would be made in that time.
Yeah, but I mean, I can understand if you're a young person and you're living in this world where everybody's always, you know, ready to be offended very
Right.
quickly. there's also the undertones of evil in that higher society.
Exactly.
So it's like, oh, what are you saying about me? Are you saying that I'm somebody who's a sheep following this cult leader, and that, I'm just, I can see why they would feel that way. I just think that we live in a really interesting society now, though, where we are all allowed to have our opinions, and because we can put it on social media, that we all feel like we're these experts when we speak about like almost any subject, and that our opinion is just as equal to everybody else's, even people who have, let's say, have degrees and have experience and everything. And so I can see the reaction, but I can also see the entitlement of this generation to,
Right.
of like, I know what I'm talking about.
Right. And they're automatically going to start putting the groups together of this film. So like the utopian society following this cult leader that is like this real kind of sanitized PC version of the culture. And then you've got like the proto-libertarian movement living in the sewers, led by Dennis Leary, which, yeah, I think that is like the perfect person to lead that. Someone that just has a big mouth and is spouting off about freedom and rights and stuff like that. But the fact that that movement's been moved underground, I think, is another interesting idea too.
No, I definitely want to get into some of the things I observed about these two different cultures and what I think is interesting about today and how things have actually played out.
For sure. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's go ahead and like talk about how the movie starts off. So in 1996, the future. I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
Los Angeles has fallen into just decay, and the gangs have taken over, and Simon Phoenix is pretty much sanctioned off a part of the city. And he's telling everyone, don't come to this part of town. It's my part of town. But apparently a bus driver took a wrong turn or something, and he's holding all these hostages in his tenement building, essentially. John Spartan bungee jumps out of a helicopter, screaming, Phoenix! As he infiltrates the building, taking out everybody and taking out Phoenix, but not before the whole building explodes. So again, there is this idea where back then we were kind of like, yeah, police, go knock that door down, go blow up that building, get these people out of there. And now the world that we live in, seeing this kind of police enforcement, you're like, ooh, lawsuit.
Yeah.
At a minimum.
Yeah.
At a minimum.
This is where police now come in and shoot somebody who's laying in bed.
Right. They've taken it to a whole new level. So because the hostages were already dead, but no one knew that, they're blaming Spartan for it. And in the future, instead of putting guys in prison, this privatized company has turned a cryogenics program into a prison and now freezing people. So again, if we look at how private and corporate prisons work now, it's like, oh, well, we're essentially doing that anyway, but instead of freezing them, we're using it as like indentured servitude. The messages are still there. It's just a little bit sanitized. And what's interesting about that is while they're frozen, they're given these implants of different skills that will make them more valuable in society. And my whole thing is, well, if they're doing that, then why do they have to be frozen for 70 years? Like, why can't you just freeze them for a couple months, implant them with this shit, and then put them back out into the world? But that's me maybe over analyzing the complex.
I went very deep into this. And
of course you did.
I started thinking about just today's attitude about rehabilitation. So a lot of people of color are mass incarcerated, and then
Right.
they're not really even given an opportunity from the start, and they have been behind in so many ways societally. And so people, are pretty, they don't have the same opportunities education wise. And when they go into prison, sometimes they have the ability to go get like a master's degree or a BA or in something, right? And a lot of people have that attitude of like, why are we educating criminals?
Right.
And the truth is, it's sad because you can get your degree and you can graduate with all sorts of accolades and whatnot. And then when you're released into the world, you don't know how to navigate through it. Like New York
No.
City is complex when it comes to their transportation system. There are people that get out 30 years later from incarceration and don't know what a Metro card is or a smartphone. And then, getting a job is very difficult for this population, because if they have a criminal record, that doesn't make them eligible for a lot of employment. So it's interesting that, that the people that are going in to this cryogenic prison are being given skills like knitting. What is knitting really going to do?
Right.
Instead of actually fortifying maybe their weaker areas, like I'm sucky at math. If I was going to be frozen, could you please make me just a little bit better at tipping my waiter when I go to a restaurant? Like I don't see why they would like not strengthen some of those weaknesses or actually give people a fighting chance if they're going to re-enter society, especially a society that is so joy like. Wouldn't you want them to actually be able to transition and get a job that would actually pay the bills and make you more likely to be a calm, good citizen?
Hey, enhance your calm.
Enhance your calm. Oh, we're going to get to that in a little bit, guys. Okay. So here's my question for you. I got a two-parter that is so when I was younger, I never really understood how society allowed all this to happen, right? Like where was the pushback? Well, it wasn't until like my mid-20s, like, oh shit, there was an earthquake they talk about that literally destroyed both cities. So that gave Cocteau the opportunity to rebuild with whatever finances he had and essentially start the society from scratch. That was a catalyst. I think a lot of people miss that. I missed it for years. It's like, oh, the great one of 2010. That's where all this kind of really came into play. But the timing's off, because if Spartan gets frozen in 1996 and it's 35 or 36 years later that this takes place, most of the people that he's working with around him, like Benjamin Bratt and Lenina Huxley, well, they were all like 10 years old. So they already knew what the world was like. So there had to have been like a mass memory reset or some kind of 5G brainwashing to make them forget the world before 2010. That's one of my conspiracies about this.
I definitely had a little bit of issue with the fact that Lenina is such a nerd over the 20th century stuff, but had no idea who these people were. And like we in our society are always repeating like this, the golden serial killer era, or
we're obsessed
diving into new iterations of that. So I'm like, how do you not know about this notorious killer?
Well, and there's another issue with that as well. If he's imprisoned in a cryogenic prison, and then there's the big one of 2010, which is big enough to crumble society. You think it didn't take down power? That man was God.
Eventually.
Not eventually. It happens a lot quicker than it should. And without the controlled environment in which it occurs, his body would have just died.
Unless there's like a Tesla thing going on where all the batteries were like operating the backup systems of this thing. It's funny because I did get a lot of Elon Musky, Tesla-y stuff of the future. Like in 2036, those cars they're driving are essentially Teslas. It blew my mind when I watch it again. I'm like, oh shit. Like even the doors open the same way. Shit. Like they've got their fuel battery cells that can blow up. Okay, we've seen that happen on the news. Like it's pretty prophetic, this film, in some ways.
But I also think that that's like art breathing into life. Like it's, there's like so much stuff on Star Trek and Star Wars that I think that later on when we get the capabilities that are going to be replicated because we have these films in place. Like
pop culture influences technology. I've heard that theory quite a few times. Now there's the other thing too about this, that, okay, is this the only city like this? Like, is the rest of the world just doing its own thing? And this is the canary in the coal mine of what this utopian city looks like? And do people just don't even want to fuck with it? Or is it like a John Carpenter thing where there's like a military presence around it that the people in the city don't understand, that their utopian society is probably defended to the gills, keeping the rest of the world out? That's another question I had.
It could be like a Man in the High Castle type of situation.
Right.
Where you've
Yeah.
got kind of factions, almost like nations
Mhm.
within what is now the U.S.
Yeah, I think of the Handmaid's Tales where like Gilead is like running this horrible dystopian society, and other people like in Canada and whatnot are like, resisting.
Yeah, and they're like, don't fuck with Gilead.
group living underneath this perfect society.
Like Morlocks to the Eloi.
Ooh, there you go. Let's go deep on those references. Now, this is one last thing too, as we were talking about, people of color and cultural things too. I mean, we're talking about San Diego and Los Angeles now as one mega city, essentially. They teach Simon Phoenix Spanish while he is in cryostasis, but it feels like the world we live in now has been culturally cleansed of anything of ethnicity. Like, no one has an accent, no one's speaking anything but joy English. So I was like, well, why do they teach this motherfucker Spanish?
That's a good point. I hadn't thought
All the
about
Spanish
that.
speakers are living underground. And I think that's like the darker tone of this movie that we weren't really paying attention to, is like, they weren't just keeping joy people above ground. They were pushing down like ethnicities and people that were sticking to their culture. Like, there's a lot of darker tones to this than the movie actually shows us.
I definitely felt discomfort around the racial thing. I mean, when I was growing up, I found a lot of Black people really scary. And I think that was very intentional. That's how society wanted to represent them, so that we would all be very scared of Black folks. And I definitely think that Wesley Snipes is acting crazy and manic and wild, and it's sad because he's a good actor, and it's really hard now to see the portrayal of Black people through a better a clearer lens, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hated was that when he recruits his homies and starts to dethaw them and whatnot, they're all kind of, the half of them are like these scary Black folks, and they seem to represent the worst, right? They even say, hey, let's unfreeze our friend Jeffrey Dahmer. And the fact that they put those folks at that level, which I thought was a little weird too, because I would go more Bundy if you were really going to go Notorious or something.
Right.
Wasn't Bundy dead at the time though?
No, but you know what I mean? Like if he was alive and frozen, like I would have picked somebody like Gacy or something like that, like somebody really wretched, and that's a tangent I can go down for days, but essentially the people that were in Phoenix's group were like the worst of the worst, and half of them happened to be Black. And then the people on the underground, they were more like Asian and Black, and there was more of a mixture, right? And so are sort of like rebelling, yes, but not being the worst of the worst.
It's like you were given a choice. Like, you can either join the Joy society and accept whatever this new world that we're living in, or if you want to hold on to your heritage, you go live in the fucking sewer. Because there are no weapons on the inside, which makes me think that there's a shit ton of weapons on the outside, and that's what's keeping them safe. There's a lot of that kind of control where utopian becomes dystopian very quickly. Now, the other thing about this movie that we have to talk about is this is that time where Stallone was just obsessed with his body. Rocky V had an opening shower scene where he's like just nude. Tango and Cash, he and Kurt Russell are walking into the prison shower with their asses hanging out. And in this one, he's like, okay, director, I want you to shoot every fucking part of my body except my dick, right? Like, I want the whole opening credits to be like zooming over my ass, essentially. It's weird. Like, it's always been weird. It was weird in the theater. It's even weirder now, where it's like, this is 2 minutes of opening credits where we're just...
He was in competition with Schwarzenegger, who's also showing his buns off, like in Terminator. And in fact, the cryo scenes, I'm like, that looks like straight Terminator, the way that they're like in that sort of
right.
Like
fetal position, hunched over almost. Yeah.
Thank you. yeah, I felt like, wow, that, and there were several movies that I felt like that's Total Recall right there. Oh, that's
Right.
Terminator right there. I mean, these two were always at it and they were always competing physique wise. So I feel like it was more of a fuck you to Schwarzenegger than anything else.
Right. Of course. Like, because in this movie, they've got that, of course, meta reference of the Schwarzenegger presidential library. He's like,
Yes.
oh shit, he was president? But then in the same year, they had Last Action Hero, which takes place in an alternate universe, when they're walking through a Blockbuster and you see a picture of Stallone as Terminator 2. And he's like,
Right.
no way. And the kid's like, oh yeah, it's like his best role. So they didn't mind like poking each other in the ribs. Like, it's funny, but at the same time, it's like, why do we have to have a dick measuring contest on screen? Like, why do we have to watch every part of your body being
I can't
exposed?
answer that for you. I've never had a dick, and all I've ever seen is guys compare their wands to each other.
I had to get that out of the way because like that's a credit sequence to like really put you in a mood for something.
I don't know. Did that work out for me? I don't remember.
Let's talk about the cast other than Stallone, because there's some great early performances from some talent that would be huge in the 90s. And then there's also a lot of veteran performers. But the first one we have to talk about is Sandra Bullock as Lenina Huxley. You know, it wasn't her first film or first feature film, but this was like her first like real beefy role. And she was a replacement. I think you knew that, right?
I didn't. Who'd you replace?
So Lori Petty of Tank Girl and League of Their Own fame shot like for 3 or 4 days as Lenina Huxley. But she was in a lot of conflict with Joel Silver because she was playing it like Lori Petty. She had her New York accent. She was kind of tough. So even when she was trying to do the bobblehead, it just didn't really come off. So they really wanted her to dumb it down. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. And so they axed her and brought Sandra Bullock in like within a day. Like she didn't even have time to do a costume fitting. She was wearing Lori Petty's clothes, which is why in some scenes, I'm like, man, her pants are like really tight around the hips in some ways. Like it's not very flattering. It's because they were literally someone else's clothes that they were shoving her into.
That makes a lot of sense. But, you know, to me, somebody spunky wouldn't have fit that role. You're looking for a sheep. You're looking for the girl next door, too. Like, and definitely, I think Sandra fills that role. He hates her. He hates Sandra
I
Bullock.
do. But not as bad as Bill Paxton, but I do hate Sandra Bullock in most things. And this might be my favorite role of hers. It's definitely in the top 3.
It's not my favorite role for her. I respect her resume of, you know, work a lot more. Like, I think she's had some really, like the what was it, the Bird Box one and
Right.
Gravity. I liked her in those roles. I think she's a really good actress. I think she's a little typecast and a little predictable in some stuff, but I think that she actually has a lot of range.
Well, especially in the 90s, because the way she kind of plays bobblehead in this, she kind of takes that into Speed with her, and she kind of takes it into The Net with her. Like, she really did play this character for the first half of the 90s. And then it wasn't until she was getting like those some dude fucked me over roles that she could start showing her dramatic chops. So 100%. But you know what? Even though I don't buy the chemistry between her and Stallone, and I don't think you're supposed to, that's the whole point, because she's non-sexual, right? Like, her idea of sex, which we'll get to later, is very different. Like, this world doesn't work that way. So her blandness actually fits the dynamic the movie's asking for, because everyone's bland. Benjamin Bratt, my boy. Oh my God. So, I mean, Blood In, Blood Out to this role in Demolition Man, that's a leap. You know, you're going from like Chicano gang leader to this in one leap. And it's surprising because he's probably the goofiest guy in the movie, not counting Rob Schneider. Let's not speak of him again.
I thought they had an appropriate amount of Rob Schneider in this movie, which is
we discussed this last time. Where you said that at least Demolition Man had the appropriate amount of Rob Schneider. They didn't give him 45 minutes of screen time like in Judge Dredd. Yeah, I mean, him singing Armor Hot Dog songs and My Dog's Better Than Yours. It's funny because, like, you see him play the tough guy or the brooding poet or the activist in these movies, and then you see him in this. It's like, okay, is this a good performance or is this a bad performance? Because it doesn't match the face. And I think that's fine. Again, that is where I think this movie operates on deeper levels than most people give it credit for, because this is a world where a strong-jawed, good-looking dude like that could be like one of the biggest pansies in the police force. It's like, all right, yeah, it kind of works.
What's interesting too about their music and stuff, it reminds me of a Hallmark movie. And I've heard that like back in World War II, that Germany would feature these very conflict-free sort of movies and media. And, it's sort of, kind of, it was like image management, like, see, everything's good, everything's perfect. And this, and it, I think that it's really interesting that you have this really sort of hostile undertone to it all while you have this very perky music.
Right. Well, this is a world where CRT doesn't exist. This is Florida, the future, essentially. I don't know. Like, people are now just listening to music and commercials from the 50s because, like you said, they're innocent. They're not promoting any kind of thought or violence or angst or desire for something. You're just hearing these happy jingles that are like consumer songbirds, buy these hot dogs, you'll have a great life, that kind of stuff. Again, the deeper undertones to this that I don't think people recognize. It's like, that's dark as shit.
Yeah. It practically screams, go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. So Otho from Beetlejuice, of course, he is perfect in this role because essentially it's Otho, but a little less manic, right? But he's like that subservient guy. He also reminds me of the eunuch dude from Game of Thrones in this, where he's kind of like the whisperer and the knowledge guy. I feel like there's some inspirations in Game of Thrones from that, at least in the performance-wise. And then Nigel Hawthorne as Cocteau, the Madness of King George. And he's great in this because he is the only person that feels like he's allowed to be emotive. He acts very prestigious and stuff when he's around people, but then when he's talking to Spartan, he kind of lets that all go. It's like, okay, perfect example, Lenina Huxley, obviously a reference to Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, getting rid of emotion, except there's a one guy in control who is still capable of emotion. That's what it feels like. Obviously, that's a reference to. So again, this nerdy sci-fi movie has a lot of deep philosophical references to classic literature, which I think is fantastic.
I agree.
Yeah, it definitely, like, now we live in a society where we have a lot of conflicts, but at least like some of us believe that all feelings are valid. And some of them find vulnerability and strength. This is definitely not that society. It's like, they want you to be anything but human. And which is interesting because humans are mostly emotional creatures.
Yeah, mostly, more than mostly. I feel we're all more emotional than physical these days.
Yeah. I mean, I think people like to think that we're really intellectual, that we put our, all of these logical thoughts first. But the truth is, our reactions are always emotional first. So to live in a society that doesn't allow you to have any feeling at all, it sounds worse to me than the singing of the commercials.
Right. I've always wondered what the currency of this world is, because they talk about credits. So it makes me wonder how credits are used, how much are credits worth, because it also feels like these people also operate on like some kind of universal basic income. If you buy into the system gives you what you need to live. Huxley has this collection of all this 90s memorabilia and 80s memorabilia in her office and in her apartment. And that's the kind of stuff where it's like, okay, well, that's probably worth a lot of money, but she's just a policeman. So how is that compensation work? But then in the underworld, they operate in a different kind of currency that we don't see. And he pays for a rat burger with a Rolex, So that leads me to my next point about how, again, I think some younger audiences wouldn't understand the capitalistic and corporate world this actually is based on, and some of the jokes and references, specifically the Taco Bell one, where in the future, every restaurant's Taco Bell because Taco Bell was the only one that survived the franchise wars. okay, so that is like a monopoly that Taco Bell had over all the other restaurants. Like Yum Brands bought everything. Okay, maybe back in the day I didn't believe it, but now that Disney practically owns everything, I'm like, shit, maybe that could happen. This joke is actually possible. Right? And then I get into that rabbit hole of like, well, do they have different tiers of Taco Bell? Because they go to a fine dining Taco Bell. Is there also like the street Taco Bell? Is there the quick service, sit down, order yourself, no waiter Taco Bell? Like, I want to know more about it.
I want to know more about like, because you were talking about earlier, like what's the society look like outside of this, and if people outside are enjoying Taco Bell. But because you have this cult leader who is very controlling, and it's, was it his choice that, like, did he have some sort of say that only allowed for this kind of food to be available?
Oh God, that is so something a guy like that would do too. It'd be like if Trump was in charge of this, he'd be like, we're only having McDonald's and we're only having cheeseburgers and Diet Coke. That's all we're having. Yeah, that's 100% accurate.
But then explain the captions, because we watched it with captions on, and in the captions it said Pizza Hut, but we could hear audibly that it was Taco Bell still. And my son was cracking up. He was watching it with us because he noticed the disparity.
It said Pizza Hut, so we were like,
it said Pizza Hut. That was for international releases, because back then there were a lot of countries that didn't have Taco Bell. So what they did, since it was the same company that owns Taco Bell owns Pizza Hut, they just changed the Pizza Hut and they would just cut that part out that would show the sign. And so in the dub, it's Pizza Hut, but in English and with the subtitles, it should be Taco Bell. But I guess some of those international cuts, their subtitles still turned it into Pizza Hut. So it was an international thing, because like you had to have a popular restaurant for it to make sense. And if you don't know what Taco Bell is, then joke doesn't work.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
But then like, what a shitty Taco Bell if there's no meat in the future.
Right.
And it's just like, what? Everything's just bean and lettuce. Like there's no cheese, there's no salt. And Taco Bell's like the saltiest place you can eat.
This was one of the areas, like, when they were ratting off what was illegal, they threw abortion in there like it was nothing, right? Like it was at the same level of like illicit drugs. And then they're like, we're mostly vegetarian, and they're kind of like ratting off all these things. And I just thought that it's so interesting that nowadays, like, you have people that are very interested in sort of making everybody live by these religious values, that there is no abortion, and that, that people are asexual, and
no swearing.
And that they live in this sort of Hallmark movie. But then at the same time, the way that things have changed is that you also have a lot of those people in that same group who are like furious that they have to wear a mask when, there's a pandemic. And so I thought that the contact-free thing was really interesting, and how that really hasn't worked out that way.
Right.
And yeah.
There's another part that I was thinking about that too, is that, Cocteau's playing the long game with the society. So what is the way that you can make people more docile? Well, you take red meat and animal flesh and stuff like that out of their diet and you feed them. I mean, we live in the society now where soy boy is a term. That's essentially what he's done to these people. He's done everything he can to make them more docile and compliant with the rules that they're given, because in exchange, they get this idea of safety. I'm not going to get AIDS because I'm not having sex. I'm not going to get high cholesterol because I'm not eating salt and meat and stuff like that. So again, that does speak to a lot of human nature, where we have seen societies give up personal freedoms in exchange for the idea of safety. And again,
that's true. But
Demolition Man is playing a whole different level of modus operandi that I think a lot of people don't notice.
But like, it's interesting because the people that continue to enjoy meat are the people that are underground. And nowadays, it's like, again, these same people, like, they want to impose these like religious values, but they're also the ones that are like, eat meat, have dairy,
right.
And I should be
no more grains.
I should be able to do what I want to do. And so I thought that it was a change we could have never foreseen, I think.
Right. That underground is like Burning Man. Like there are people down there just fucking and eating meat and wearing all sorts of crazy clothes. They probably burn a effigy every night. Like that's what it feels like in some of those moments. So I have another question too that kind of leads to that. So Simon Phoenix gets out of prison. He gets his guns, which was a cool scene. That whole action scene in the museum. I liked it. My question for you is like, once he unleashes his gang from the cryo prison and they're down there and within a day, they're all mad maxed out, right? They're all wearing tire football gear and armor and stuff like that. They've got a whole gang of hoes with them. Where do they get the hoes?
I never even considered, but I assume the underground. Where else?
But no one seems to know where they are or who they are. And when they find them and try to kill Spartan, that's the first time they found them. So I'm assuming, did these girls get defrosted too? Where like these Griselda, the cocaine queen and stuff like that, were these kind of people in prison as well? I never could figure out where they got these girls from.
They must have just materialized. They came as part of the package, I guess.
The part of the package. All right. Might be a hole in the plot, or maybe there's a director's cut that we didn't see. So let's talk about, in the next 10 minutes, questions that we have about this movie that don't seem to be answered. That was my first one. Now, let's say I kicked it off with that.
I've been waiting for this since we talked about Dread. The 3 seashells. Purpose
I knew it.
Never explained, and I did do a little bit of research into it. So Stallone said in a 2006 interview that basically you wield 2 out of the 3 seashells like chopsticks to pick off shit from your ass, and the third one was to scrape off anything that was left, which is, gross. And Sandra Bullock said in an interview at some point, I didn't get a date on it, but she described it as being more like a bidet, which would make a lot more sense, I think, with their cleanly, contactless society. But the screenwriter, Daniel Waters, said that it actually came because he was writing this script. He called his friend who happened to answer from the bathroom where he was taking a shit, and he asked what he had in his bathroom that, just around. And he looked around, he had a decoration of some seashells. So he told Waters that, and Waters put it in. He's like, yep, 3 seashells. Boom. It purposefully never explained.
It's like the fucking briefcase in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Like there's no answer to it. There's no real, everyone's got a theory, but there's no real answer to it.
There's a fan theory that I particularly like and really fits into this contactless society, which is that the 3 seashells are positioned on your ass, pointing at each other, and they use resonance between the 3 seashells to vibrate the shit contactlessly off of your ass. And I just thought that was a fantastic idea.
The only opposition that I have is like, people are dirty. And like,
well, yeah, who's washing the seashells?
It's a contactless society. If I use the Starbucks or Taco Bell bathroom, right? And then somebody is behind me or the person in front of me, like just left. How do I know if they cleaned this? Like, right. Is that automated? Because if it's left up to humans, there's still going to be disease floating around.
Right, because when they show the shot in his bathroom, it's just 3 seashells like on a little hand towel. Like, I don't see a collection of seashells like a stack of plates at a buffet where you're like, oh, gonna get a new one. Right. Like, oh no, those are your seashells for the day. Like, you throw them in the dishwasher at the end of the night.
And do they issue you a ticket for every time you don't clean it well?
Probably.
You will find 1 credit for unsanitary seashells.
Yeah, so that was the lingering question for me was about the 3 seashells. Did you have any?
No, I mean, I saw also that they use part of it to first scrape off, and then the idea was that afterwards it would be bidet.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I had
going logic here.
I had one more, which was something that didn't make sense to me as I watched it. At one point, John Spartan is watching security footage of Cocteau and Phoenix, and the security
I know where you're going with this.
Is edited. It is multi-camera edited between them to see their faces as they're speaking, and that just
it's worse than that
for security cameras.
It's worse than that. It's just the same shots that are actually in the movie that they repurposed for the security footage.
Yep.
One of my least favorite examples of that is in the movie The Running Man, where they show clips of shit that hasn't happened yet in the movie as previews for the night's episode on TV and on the big projection screens. Like you see Sub-Zero and you see Domino and all these guys doing their shit. And that shit hasn't even happened yet in the movie, but they're using it as the trailer for the episode. So yeah, that's just laziness right there. They're just using the shit that they shot. All right. I got a question for you because we haven't really talked about it. I want to know about the sex helmets.
Yes.
What is your idea of how that works and what it's doing?
Ooh, I didn't even consider it. What I considered was, would I do it? And I came to the conclusion that yes, but it wouldn't be a substitute for the real thing.
Elle?
I have seen a couple of other sci-fi movies where there's like sort of like a hologram sexy time thing, and I kind of equated it to that, and I figured that it probably tapped into all of those neural networks that were responsible for those more like, primitive functions. That's how I took it. I took it as kind of like sex without the sex doll.
Okay. So because this is shit that I think about, which I don't know why, I've always wondered, even from back in the day, even from that theater. So what's up with the dude? Are there emissions evolved?
I'm imagining of your.
Is he going to shoot in his pants and then spend the rest of the night on the date or walking around with it? He's, not in his place. That was always my question. Is it like a wet dream for the guy? Like, what is the conclusion of the sex helmet?
She didn't bring out a towel. She had thought of like everything, it seemed, and she did not bring out a towel, which implies that there's not going to be a load in his pants.
Are there seashells for ejaculations? That's my question. Or is it
come out in a
Is
row?
it like a conch shell?
I think John Spartan went number 3.
Because you're in this society, kind of like we were making a point with this in Benny and June, our recent episode. It's just like, just because, people say that, oh, you're infantilized or you're too young for this or you don't have enough experience doesn't make you less horny. So I'm imagining that there are emissions when you're having dreams and there's still masturbation. So if that's not off the table, it's just more, this is what we do when we have sex. And that is that, and you are responsible for cleaning yourself. I think that she also just thought that he would know because she was confused that he wasn't delighting in this experience. And then, and I think she just thought, oh, well, you must know what sex is. So you're going to take care of your emissions.
Oh, yeah. Stallone trying to be sexy is the worst. Sorry. Okay, so there are dirty birds, though, out there, because when he goes back to his apartment and he turns on his vid phone or whatever, there's like a naked chick saying, I've been thinking about you, Johnny, or whatever. She's like, oh, my goodness. So it's like, oh, breaking the law out there.
Maybe.
You will find one credit for indecent supposure.
It's a video call, so I guess they weren't breaking any rules.
I mean, back in the day, do you remember when you used to call a hotline and somebody sexy would pick up the phone? Well, not somebody sexy, somebody with a sexy
You didn't know if they were sexy. The voice was sexy.
It was like usually a single mom bathing her baby.
Like in a trailer in Florida or some shit.
Yeah, pretty much. It was a sad existence, but this was very much a part of the culture. So I just think that's what they thought that would look like. It would be more video content, like, oh, call me, that kind of thing.
I love it. Any final questions before we move on to my last little part of this conversation?
I think I would have loved to see more of the underground world. I feel like there's a gold mine of storytelling down there that they didn't even scratch the surface of. Agreed.
I mean, that's where all the interesting shit was happening, because like that is the rebellion. They've got their own makeshift guns. It is Mad Max down there. So yeah, I think that would have been really, really cool.
That's where I'd be living.
Yeah, me too. I don't know anyone that would want to live in Joyland at all. Like take me down to the Burning Man world. I'm gonna be happier down there. And I get a rat burger.
Exactly.
All right. So this last part of my conversation is we're gonna play a little game, and we're gonna take a tally And in that tally, we're going to determine what the best punk band name would be based off of phrases from this movie.
Okay.
So I got a list of dialogue and catchphrases from this film. We're going to do 1 through 10 and decide what is going to be the best punk band name based off of these phrases. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So band name number 1, Murder, Death, Kill.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be pack leader if it was number 9.
Well, see, I think it's a little bit more metal, but I'm still going to give it a 7. What about you, Chris?
No, I would give that a 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it'd be up there. I think.
All right. So we're giving you a 9 too?
I might give that a 10.
A 10. Oh, shit. All right. All right. Number 2, Maniac Imminent.
Ooh. I think it's a little too overt. And I think it would be, I would give that a 3.
Giving it a 3. I'm giving it a 6. Al, what about you?
2.
A 2. All right. I don't think Maniac Imminent's going to win this one. Number 3, Enhance Your Calm.
Oh, that just makes me mad.
That's so perfect.
It is really perfect. Yeah. I'm gonna
Enhance
give
your
that.
calm.
I'm gonna give that an 8.
I'm giving it a 9.
Okay, 8 for me.
2 8s and a 9. All right. Enhance Your Calm. Doing pretty well. The next one, Muscle Bound Grotesque.
Ooh. 4.
I give that a 5.
A 4 and a 5. I'll give it a 5 as well. All right. This one is pretty good. Hall of Violence.
Yes.
Ooh.
Oh my god. But wait a minute. That strikes me more as an album title than a band name.
Oh yeah, Hall of Violence
could be an
by
album
Murder,
for
Death, Kill.
That's even like poetic.
Right?
I feel like if I had a hall in a museum, that's what it would be called.
Okay.
It's a band name. I'm going to give that a 7.
I'm gonna give it a 7 too.
That's 7 for me too. 7 across the board on Hall of Violence. All right, next on the list, Simon Says Bleed.
Oh, fuck off.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, but Simon was really annoying me every time he said, Simon says this. I'm like, shut up. I'm going to give it a 2.
Simon
Okay.
Says Bleed. No, I'm going to give that. Also, I think it would make a better album name, but Simon Says Bleed, I would give
Like the sophomore release, right?
Yeah.
Their second album.
Exactly.
Okay.
Murder, Death, Kill plays the hits.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one on the list, No Kiss Kiss, No Bang Bang.
Ooh.
That's a sad song and a sad album.
And a sad
That's
band.
like,
It's just
yeah,
sad
that's like a
songs.
Cure album or something, right?
Yeah.
Morrissey's new album, No Kiss Kiss, No Bang Bang. I'm giving that a 3.
1.
That's like an incel album. I'm going to give that a 1.
Okay, so this one's going to be difficult because this could be easily a G.G. Allen band name.
Okay.
Fluid Transfer.
Ooh.
Ooh, that does sound like a
That's a
album
really
name.
good. No, that would be a great band name.
Yeah, that is a good one. Oh,
I'm gonna have to give that one a 9.
I'm gonna give it a 9.
I'm giving that one a 9 too. So that's 3 9s across the board.
All right.
All right. This one's pretty simple, maybe too simple. Be fucked.
I feel like I'd play that all the time.
That's my entrance music.
Yeah, that's just what I
Are we
wake up
saying
this morning.
that's side 1, track 1
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Muscle Bound Grotesque or Hall of Violence?
I like that a lot.
I think I'm gonna give that a 6. I think it maybe is too on the nose.
I like it. I'm gonna
All right.
give it an 8.
All right, I'm giving that one a 6 too. Okay, and this one is more for a joke. I think that this is more of like a ska band. The last one on the list is Let's Go Blow This Guy.
that would be a terrible punk band name. I would give that a 1.
That's just a third.
As a ska band, I'm giving it a 10. As a punk band, I'm giving it a 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
All right, and so that makes it a tie between Murder, Death, Kill and Fluid Transfer. Do we want to do like a sudden death between those two?
I think we should do a sudden
Yeah.
death. We got 3 voters, so there absolutely will be a winner
Yeah.
if each of us chooses. All right.
Okay,
I'm going to go with fluid.
I'm going fluid transfer.
Yeah. And because I think you're right, Murder, Death, Kill would be a better metal name.
Right. What about you?
I agree with you guys.
Fluid Transfer is the new name of our punk band from this list of dialogue from Demolition Man. That's a great game. We should play that again with another movie. But this movie had so many good ones. Like, as I was taking my notes, I'm like, God damn, that's a great. Every single one of these, with the exception of No Kiss Kiss No Bang Bang, I think it's a great band name on almost all of these.
I think that would be a good song name.
Yes. I still think it sounds like a Morrissey song, but whatever.
It could be.
What a fun conversation, guys. I love doing this again. And now comes the final question of the night. We've already done one. Now we're on the other one. Demolition Man, Judge Dredd. Who you got?
Remember on our last episode, I said I think I like Judge Dredd more than Demolition Man. I stand by my words.
Really?
I do. I enjoyed Judge Dredd more. I think I liked a lot of aspects of Judge Dredd. It didn't like all gel for me, but I felt like there were things like here and there that I really liked. Like I liked those guys out in the wasteland. I liked the actors. I liked, Judge Dredd's like mentor. I liked his nemesis. Like I just didn't think they were all cast right, but I liked elements of it so much more. I was so annoyed watching Demolition Man. And I felt like it borrowed so much from Judge Dredd. Like the end of the movie feels so similar. Like, okay, we just blew up society. Yay. Everybody's happy. Roll credit.
There's no leader. Yay.
There's no leader. There's no resolution. We should all be so happy. Why?
Right. Like fucking Otho's going to come and take over. Like,
Yeah. And Stallone, again, convicted for something he didn't really do and just paying the price. I'm like, this borrows so much. It feels like, I don't know. I mean, it came
first, but it's a very common tale. And then he did that movie Lock Up too, so he just liked being the guy that was being blamed for shit he didn't do.
Right. I think the only strength really of this movie was less Rob Schneider.
That's a big deal.
It's a really big deal.
Mean, I'm not going to deny that Rob Schneider was fucking annoying in Judge Dredd, but I found Wesley Snipes just so cartoonish in this film. He looked like a Looney Tunes character, and his backup audio with it was just
the record scratching.
Yeah, the record scratching was so irritating.
See, now I think
we already know what Chris's is.
Well, but I can justify it because I would say that what Demolition Man has in common with Judge Dredd or Judge Dredd 95 is that I'm very interested in the stories they didn't tell in both movies. But what Demolition Man has over Judge Dredd for me is that the story that they did tell, I found to be stronger and less annoying and better executed.
Okay, I like that justification. So I guess it comes down to me to determine in this little trio of which is preferred.
You and I.
Okay, all right. I'm going to give you the prologue. I said this in many episodes. I think I might have even said it in our Judge Dredd episode. When it comes to these kind of decisions, I always go by off of what is the film that I reach for off the shelf the most, which is a film that I am more intrigued to watch when there's nothing else to watch. And for me, that's Judge Dredd. So Judge Dredd is my pick of the three, for sure. I kind of agree with Ellen on this one. Like, I think it's a lot of fun, this movie, and I think it does play on a lot deeper levels than people expect. Like, you can have different, I'm going to say, class types watch this movie, or people of different, states of education and understanding of literature and culture and society that can notice all the things that are in the layers of it. But I do think that the satire and caricature of the film is just a little too much for my taste. I said the same thing with Last Action Hero. It's just too on the nose. The satire's too thick. And I like thick satire, but not when it's trying to compete with action and drama and story. Give me a Top Secret or Airplane any day, But when you meld two together, you got to be really good at it. And I feel this doesn't accomplish that for me. So Judge Dredd is the way I go.
Yeah, sometimes it could just be too distracting from all the things, because
Yeah.
we did have good plot and really, really, really awesome subliminal things baked in, and it was just lost in all the corniness and all the,
Right.
the forced smiles and everything, and just the jokes. It just got lost for me.
Y'all are dead to me.
I feel that people in the den are going to hate this turnout because I think they're all Demolition Man fans from what I've seen. So there's going to be some aftermath for this one.
Uh-oh.
I'm on your side.
I'm going to get death threats now.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, she's with-
Barrel Age Flicks is like, fuck you.
I'm just going to go get my weapons at the Hall of Violence.
Yeah, right?
The bedroom.
That's another episode. That's another podcast.
Telling him everything.
All right, guys. So where can people find you and what do you have coming up in the month of January?
Well, you can find us across social media at Spoil My Movie. You can check our socials for our phone number and leave us a voicemail. We'd love that. And in the month of January, we're going to be pushing more of our video content to YouTube and TikTok. And down the line, way down, we're going to be doing our own March Madness bracket. So we're still putting together some details on that, but basically we're doing all of our peck-off battles, started with Stallone versus Schwarzenegger. And those will all be the round ones of what is a larger bracket.
Yeah, making it into the competition is Darth Vader and Alien and Thing and Thanos. So I think that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see and hear all the stuff that you guys got coming out. And everyone that watches and listens to my show, you can find all of their contact information in my Cultworthy Partners page on the cultworthy.com. And Spoil My Movie, thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk again soon. We have to figure out what the next Stallone or Schwarzenegger movie is that we're going to do, because I think we've got a thing going here and I like it.
I think so.
I like it
I
too.
think we've got to do more. Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Of course. Everyone, good night.